There is a moment, often invisible to everyone else, when a Sigma Empath begins to pull their heart back. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of deep, silent self-protection. Long before they physically leave a relationship or a connection, their emotions begin to retreat. They stop sharing the way they used to. Their eyes lose a softness that was once always there. Their presence shifts from warm to distant, not because they stopped caring, but because they finally realized they were caring alone. And that emotional withdrawal is the first sign that something inside them has broken quietly, in a way that cannot be repaired with apologies or temporary change. What most people don't understand is that Sigma Empaths never leave suddenly. They leave emotionally first. They analyze the pattern, they feel the imbalance, they witness the lack of effort, and piece by piece, their heart begins closing itself to protect what's left of their spirit. They stop investing where they are depleted. They stop explaining what should already be understood. They stop offering emotional safety to someone who never offered it in return. By the time they walk away on the outside, they've already left on the inside. And that inner departure is the real ending, the one that cannot be undone. Before we go deeper, I want to know something from you. Have you ever withdrawn emotionally long before you actually left someone? Tell me in the comments. And to show you're here until the end, type withdrawn. It helps this message reach the people who need it. If you're new here, subscribe to Brainy Empath, because the next part of this video will reveal the exact signs that show a Sigma Empath is already halfway out the door. They stop sharing their inner world because they no longer feel emotionally safe. A Sigma Empath's inner world is not something they hand out casually. It is a place of depth, imagination, intuition, and emotional truth. When they trust someone, they open that world gently, offering pieces of their soul through stories, vulnerability, and quiet confessions. But the moment they start feeling unsafe, misunderstood, dismissed, or taken for granted, that door begins to close. At first, it's subtle. They share a little less. They think twice before expressing what they feel. They keep certain emotions to themselves that they once would have spoken aloud. Not to manipulate, but to protect themselves. Emotional safety is everything to a Sigma Empath, and once it's compromised, their heart retreats in silence, long before the other person realizes anything has changed. This withdrawal isn't dramatic. It's quiet, thoughtful, instinctive. They notice the sighs when they open up, the lack of interest in their inner struggles, the shallow responses to their depth. They notice how the other person's attention drifts when they talk about what matters to them. And slowly, the empath begins to realize that their inner world is being received as an inconvenience rather than a gift. That realization wounds them more deeply than arguments ever could. It teaches them that the connection is no longer a space where they can show their true self without consequence. So they start editing their thoughts, filtering their emotions, and withholding the softness that once flowed naturally. In silence, they build a wall, not out of spite, but out of necessity. As they withdraw emotionally, something fundamental shifts. They stop relying on the other person for comfort, insight, or closeness. Their conversations become practical instead of personal. Their laughter becomes lighter, their presence quieter. They switch from connection to observation, studying the dynamic without the fog of emotion. And the more they see, the clearer it becomes. They do not feel safe enough to stay open. This clarity transforms their behavior. They invest less, expect less, hope less. And in that emotional distance, their independence regrows like armor being reforged. By the time the other person notices the emptiness in their voice or the distance in their eyes, the empath has already retreated to a place they cannot be reached. Not because they want to hurt anyone, but because they learned through pain that protecting their inner world is not optional. When emotional safety disappears, the Sigma Empath's heart disappears with it. And once they stop sharing their inner world, the relationship is already ending, quietly and irreversibly, from the inside out. Their intuition detects a shift in the relationship long before words confirm it. A Sigma Empath never waits for someone to say, "Something is wrong." They feel it first, deeply, subtly, unmistakably. Their intuition registers the change long before the other person is conscious of it themselves. A pause where there used to be warmth. A hesitation where there used to be certainty. A new heaviness in someone's tone, or a sudden lightness that feels like detachment. The empath senses these micro shifts instantly, not because they are paranoid, but because they are emotionally attuned in ways most people don't even understand. When a relationship begins to change, when affection fades, when honesty fractures, when priorities shift, the Sigma Empath's intuition catches the first tremor. And once they feel it, they cannot unfeel it. This awareness becomes a quiet storm inside them. They start noticing patterns they once brushed aside. The delayed replies, the lack of interest in their thoughts, the subtle withdrawal of effort. They notice how someone's touch feels different, how their eyes avoid full connection, how their words lose emotional weight. These details seem insignificant to others, but to an empath, they are signals, warnings that the deeper bond they once relied on is loosening. They don't confront immediately. They don't accuse. Instead, they observe, gathering pieces of truth from moments the other person doesn't even realize they're revealing. Intuition becomes their compass, guiding them through the emotional fog long before anyone admits that the dynamic has shifted. As their intuition sharpens, their heart begins to adapt. They start preparing themselves silently for the truth they know is coming. Their emotional investment softens. Their expectations lower. They stop giving as freely because they understand, without needing proof, that the connection is no longer what it used to be. They create emotional distance, not because they want to, but because their intuition tells them they must. A Sigma Empath never leaves without understanding the full emotional landscape, and intuition provides that map. It shows them where the cracks are, where the affection is fading, where their presence is no longer met with the same warmth. By the time the other person finally says something is wrong, or worse, pretends everything is fine, the empath has already navigated the truth internally. They've already processed the loss. They've already made peace with the reality words will soon confirm. And once their intuition completes the puzzle, they become unreachable. Not emotionally volatile, not reactive, but quietly resolved. For a Sigma Empath, intuition is the first goodbye, and by the time the relationship ends out loud, they walked away long ago in silence. They reduce emotional investment after realizing their efforts aren't being matched. A Sigma Empath does not pull back suddenly. They pull back gradually, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. The shift begins the moment they recognize the imbalance in the relationship. When they notice they are the one initiating conversations, offering reassurance, giving emotional support, and holding the connection together while the other person contributes only when it's convenient. At first, they try harder, hoping effort will inspire effort. But eventually, the truth settles in. Their emotional investment is being received, even consumed, yet never reciprocated. And when a Sigma Empath realizes the scales are this uneven, something inside them recalibrates. They stop giving the depth that isn't returned. They stop pouring love into hands that stay closed. They stop offering emotional presence to someone who offers only inconsistency. This realization doesn't make them bitter. It makes them clear. They start noticing small details they once overlooked. How their vulnerability is met with silence. how their emotional honesty is met with half-hearted responses, how their support is expected but never acknowledged. They see that their efforts don't inspire gratitude, just entitlement. And this awareness changes everything. The empath begins to withdraw emotionally, not as punishment, but as protection. They redirect the love they once gave outward back into themselves. They stop explaining their feelings because explanations never changed anything. They stop initiating because they've learned no one meets them halfway. What was once emotional generosity becomes emotional conservation. As their investment decreases, their internal freedom grows. They no longer feel responsible for maintaining the emotional connection. They stop absorbing the other person's moods. They stop adjusting themselves to keep the peace. Their heart softens not toward the relationship, but toward themselves. And in that softness, clarity emerges. A connection that depends on one person's effort is not a connection. It's an emotional burden. The empath sees this with painful precision, and with that clarity comes the silent release of attachment. By the time the other person notices the withdrawal, it's already too late. The Sigma Empath has emotionally stepped back to observe the relationship for what it truly is, not what they hoped it could be. They become unreachable because their heart no longer beats in rhythm with a connection that didn't honor them. Once they realize their efforts were never matched, their investment ends. And when a Sigma Empath stops investing, the relationship is already over, whether the other person realizes it or not. They detach to observe the connection without the influence of feelings. When a Sigma Empath begins to withdraw emotionally, it is not because they have stopped caring, it is because they need clarity. Feelings, to them, are powerful but blinding. Deep affection can make them overlook red flags, justify inconsistencies, or excuse emotional neglect. So when their intuition signals that something is off, their first instinct is to step back from the emotional noise. They detach not to escape, but to see. To observe the relationship objectively, stripped of hope, longing, or attachment. This detachment is subtle. They become quieter, more reflective, less reactive. And in that emotional distance, they begin analyzing the connection like a puzzle finally laid out under proper light. What makes this moment transformative is how differently the empath sees everything from this vantage point. Behaviors that once felt ambiguous suddenly make sense. Patterns they ignored sharpen into clarity. They notice who reaches out and who only responds, who shows up and who disappears, who values their presence and who only notices them when they need something. Without the influence of feelings, the truth becomes undeniable. They start to recognize how much they were giving, how little they were receiving, and how heavily the emotional labor rested on their shoulders. This kind of clarity doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from silence, observation, and emotional self-distance. In this detached state, the Sigma Empath begins to test the connection subconsciously. They stop initiating to see whether the other person steps forward. They stop offering emotional support to see if the other person even notices its absence. They stop over-explaining themselves to see whether understanding is ever going to be mutual. Each small test becomes a mirror, revealing the true depth or the shocking emptiness of the relationship. And as the evidence gathers, the empath's heart grows steadier. What once felt like love may now look like imbalance. What once felt like loyalty may now look like self-sacrifice. And the more they see, the less they feel. By the time their detachment is visible to others, the emotional shift has already solidified inside them. They are no longer influenced by old feelings or hopeful fantasies. They are guided by truth. When they detach, they do so completely, not out of coldness, but out of self-respect. They become unreachable because they have already gathered everything they needed to know. And once a Sigma empath sees a relationship clearly, without the distortion of emotion, their next step is inevitable. They walk away quietly, cleanly, and permanently, carrying with them a clarity they will never again compromise. They withdraw when they see patterns repeating despite their attempts to fix things. A Sigma empath can forgive almost anything once, but they cannot forgive a pattern that refuses to change. They notice the subtle cycles others overlook, the promises that break in the same places, the apologies that sound practiced, the behaviors that return as soon tension fades. At first, they try to fix things. They communicate clearly. They express their needs with honesty and softness. They give someone the blueprint for loving them correctly. But when the same hurt repeats, when their effort is met with temporary improvement instead of real change, something inside them begins to shift. They realize they're not in a relationship, they're in a loop. And the moment that truth clicks, the withdrawal begins. This withdrawal isn't dramatic. It doesn't come with accusations or ultimatums. It comes with exhaustion, the quiet emotional fatigue that follows every repeated disappointment. The empath starts remembering how many times they tried to address the same issue, how many times they tolerated the same emotional imbalance, how many times they gave the benefit of the doubt to someone who took advantage of it. And slowly, the weight of those repetitions becomes heavier than the love holding the connection together. The Sigma empath sees the pattern not as a moment, but as a truth. And that truth rewrites everything. Once they recognize the repetition, they stop investing in repair. They stop offering solutions to someone who doesn't truly want to change. They stop explaining the same pain over and over. Instead, they observe quietly, watching to see whether the pattern continues when they no longer try to correct it. And almost always, it does. This confirms what their heart resisted for too long. The connection is not growing because only one person is trying. Their withdrawal becomes a form of self-preservation, a way of stepping out of the emotional quicksand that keeps pulling them back into the same wounds. By the time the other person realizes the empath is slipping away, the decision has already been made internally. The Sigma empath has accepted the truth that repeating patterns are not accidents, they are choices. And they refuse to keep participating in a cycle designed to drain them. They become unreachable because they've learned the final, hardest lesson. If someone wanted to change, they would have changed the first time it mattered. And once a Sigma empath understands that, they walk away silently, not with anger, but with the deep clarity that their heart deserves better than repetition disguised as love. They protect their energy by cutting emotional access before physical distance. A Sigma empath never leaves all at once. Their departure begins long before anyone notices, long before they pack a bag, end a relationship, or stop answering messages. It begins with the quiet decision to protect their energy. Empaths feel everything deeply, so emotional access is sacred to them. But when a connection becomes draining, unbalanced, or unsafe, the very first thing they do is pull their energy back. They withdraw emotionally while their physical presence remains the same, creating an invisible distance that most people don't recognize until it's too late. This is their shield, their boundary, their way of reclaiming a power they once gave freely. This emotional cutoff is never impulsive. It comes after months, sometimes years, of absorbing more than they should, giving more than they receive, forgiving more than is healthy. They begin to ration their empathy, no longer offering comfort on demand, no longer acting as someone's emotional anchor. Their responses become shorter, their attention less available, their energy calmer but colder. They stop sharing personal things. They stop initiating deep conversations. They stop showing vulnerability because vulnerability requires trust, and trust has already been damaged. They understand that protecting their energy is not cruel, it is survival. What surprises people is how gentle but complete this shift is. The empath doesn't argue. They don't fight. They don't seek revenge. They simply unplug the emotional cord that once connected them. And without that connection, the other person can no longer access their empathy, their comfort, or their emotional presence. To the outside world, nothing looks different. But internally, the empath has already left. They observe interactions without absorbing them. They listen without taking on anyone's emotional weight. They exist without attaching. And for the first time in a long time, they feel themselves breathing again. By the time physical distance eventually happens, when they finally walk away, end the relationship, or disappear from someone's life, the real departure is already old news to them. They have grieved privately. They have detached logically. They have rebuilt their internal boundaries with quiet strength. When they finally leave physically, it is simply the final step in a journey that began in silence. They are unreachable because emotional access was severed long before physical access ever ended. And once a Sigma empath protects their energy this way, there is no returning to the connection that taught them to guard it. They leave emotionally first, because by the time they walk away, the bond is already broken inside them. A Sigma empath's goodbye never begins the day they physically walk away. It begins in the quietest corners of their heart, long before the world can see it. They don't leave suddenly, and they don't leave without trying. They stay through discomfort, through confusion, through the hope that things might change. They give chances. They explain their feelings. They communicate their needs. They try to repair the bond with sincerity and patience. But there comes a moment when something inside them breaks, not loudly, not angrily, but with a silent finality. It's the moment they realize the connection they were fighting for no longer exists. And once that inner break happens, they begin to detach in ways that cannot be reversed. This emotional departure is subtle but profound. They stop imagining a future with the person. They stop feeling excitement when they hear their name. They stop waiting for messages, stop hoping for effort, stop expecting understanding. The emotional threads that once held them close unravel one by one. And because Sigma empaths are deeply introspective, they process this loss internally, privately, long before the other person senses any distance. They grieve quietly, letting go of expectations, rewriting the story in their mind, and accepting the painful truth. The bond is already gone. Their detachment becomes a form of self-healing, a way of preparing themselves for the physical separation they know is coming. By the time they physically walk away, the goodbye has already been lived through countless times inside their heart. That's why they can leave so calmly, so cleanly, without anger or dramatic closure. It's not coldness, it's completion. They have already felt the heartbreak, accepted the truth, and rebuilt their emotional boundaries. To the other person, their exit may seem sudden or unexpected, but to the Sigma empath, it is simply the final step in a journey that started the day the connection stopped nourishing their soul. Their silence becomes the proof that the emotional bond has dissolved, and nothing left can tether them to a place where they once loved deeply but no longer feel seen. Once they reach this stage, they become unreachable, not because they refuse to connect, but because the connection is already dead within them. You cannot revive a bond a Sigma empath has already mourned. When they leave emotionally first, Their heart has moved on to a place of peace, clarity, and self-protection. And from that place, there is no returning. Their goodbye is not a single moment. It is a transformation. And once it's complete, the door never opens again. When a Sigma empath reaches this point, it isn't heartbreak anymore. It's evolution. They don't leave out of anger, revenge, or bitterness. They leave because staying would mean abandoning themselves. And once they reclaim their emotional clarity, nothing from the past has the power to pull them back. Their silence becomes closure. Their distance becomes healing. Their future becomes theirs again. If you're still here, it means you felt something in this message. Tell me in the comments, I choose clarity. It's the word that shows you watched until the end. And before you go, subscribe. Because if you miss the next video, you'll miss the psychological truths that could change the way you understand yourself and every relationship in your life.